And already with my legendary prowess on running meetings, I just showed you the outro music rather than the intro music. So at the end, I'll show you the intro music because I chose the wrong window because I was a little bit nervous. Anyway, I'd like to introduce our sniggering in the background panelists. First of all the way from St. Petersburg, a very old friend of mine from when we were both in DevRel from Opera. He's invited me to cavort with him on the White Nights in St. Petersburg. Please give a warm welcome to Mr. Vadim Makiv. Vadim, reveal yourself.
I'm here, but I'm not sure if you can see me.
I'm sure Scott will press the button.
Oh, yeah.
I did invite.
Hello, everyone.
Vitaly, you should have an invite to start video as well.
Yeah, actually, but I wait to be introduced. I want to be introduced.
Yeah. Let's hide Vitaly for a while.
As long as possible.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. You'll see and hear me later once Bruce introduced Vitaly, and we'll go for the rest of the show.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Vadim. What do you do now?
Well, recording video show, Bruce. I work for HTML Academy. It's an educational company based in St. Petersburg, Russia, one of the biggest one, but it's Russian speaking. But I have some news for you later today. So we're starting to work with international communities. So I got something for you. So I'm a teacher, HTML teacher, you might say.
Cool. And you recently had your first English language article published in Smashing Magazine, I believe.
Oh yeah, that was super cool. I'm still not sure if it was the best article, but yeah, I'm really proud of it. So thank you for your help. Thank you to Smashing Magazine for publishing it. So I have a couple more in drafts. So expect more.
Wicked. And after this webinar, folks, on the webinar's details page, I'll add a link to Vadim's articles and to all the other ones that we referenced today. Our second Groovy panelist is a man who is probably no stranger to anybody who's been involved in the world of Smashing conferences and Smashing Magazine, all the way from wherever he is in the world right now, and it could be anywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, I need to stop saying that. Folks, friends, please welcome Mr. Vitaly Friedman.
Yes, I think it works now. Yes, hello everyone. Nice to see so many people here. Nice to see you, Bruce, and you, Vadim, here as well.
Hey.
I go like way back with Vadim. It's like never-ending story.
Oh yeah,
that's interesting, but we don't have time for all of those crazy times. Tell us about yourself, Vadim, for Vitaly, for those people who don't know you, if there is anybody.
Sure. So basically, I think that most of my time these days is spent exploring. I love exploring. I love thinking about the way we can do things better. So I'm just coming from a trip from Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina, talking to many local companies, running meetups, little workshops and this and that. And it was very exciting to be like in the part of the world where, frankly, most people don't go to in our industry, right? And so that was really, really exciting. And I felt that this is also a part that I'm very proud of, to be like a part of that community and explore what the community is like.
It's always great, isn't it, to go to the places where kind of off the beaten track for Western speakers. I remember years ago, Opera sent me to Indonesia, and it was really humbling because people were so glad. They said, everybody goes to Singapore and everybody goes to Bangkok because they're cool places, and nobody comes to Indonesia. And it felt really good to bring the message of web standards to those people.
Yeah,
anyway.
now actually, if we look into it, sorry to interrupt you, Bruce, but now look at what's happening in Indonesia. It's like a growing market. It's an incredible scale. So this is, it's very important to explore and not kind of break out of the boundaries that you feel comfortable in.
Absolutely. And I'm not claiming sole credit for the explosion of the Indonesian web development market.
Although maybe you should.
Hell, I'll claim it. Why not? So, folks, let me explain what the fabulous and groovy Vadim and Vitaly video show is. It's going to be approximately once a month, although Vitaly and Vadim have busy schedules. They're in demand worldwide. It's only me who lives in this room and never leaves. It's going to be a monthly roundup of the news, all things browser related, web standards related, web related, conference related. If anybody has any news that they wish to share for the next one, please send it to me. The format's going to be that Vadim will give a roundup of the news, and then Vitaly will tell him where he's wrong, and I will sit in the middle and stop them actually hitting each other. And we'll discuss it. We welcome your comments. Please send them, keep them coming, and I'll put them to Vitaly and Vadim. And we want this to be a discursive way, so where appropriate, we're going to invite guests from industry to discuss individual subjects, other people, perhaps even you out there. Yes, you, because you look really great. Anyway, now it is time for the news with Mr. Vadim Makiv. What's happening, Vadim?
Let me share my screen first, and then we'll see. Can you see it?
We can.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. So there's a regular news every 6 weeks. You know, there's another browser coming out, and the most exciting release is Chrome 73. I was really surprised. Well, not really surprised, but I was happy to see one of my favorite features finally coming to macOS. It's PWA. So basically, I was able to install my favorite web apps as native, well, sort of native applications on Mac. So the first two things I installed personally, first was the Scoosh app, where you can optimize bitmap images, and the second one was SVG OMG, basically the same for vector images. So I highly recommend you not visiting those sites next time, but having to have applications that are also available, not just native applications, but also available offline. So that's the biggest feature of this release. Well, if you're using Windows or Linux, it's still a thing. I heard you have it for a few months or maybe half a year already. But so please use this feature. It will help you to optimize your graphics at least, or I don't know, install some Twitter as a standalone application. That's probably it for Chrome 73. There are many other features like constructible style sheets, but I'm not gonna go into details. If you're familiar with web components, you're probably already dancing and shouting from mountains that you're happy that it's available. Something else from Chromium blog is Chrome Light Pages. Just like Bruce mentioned, we used to work together in Opera browser, in Opera DevRel team, and we were not strangers to Opera Mini and the proxy browsers, so we were working on helping websites to stay compatible with not just desktop and mobile Opera browsers, but with some proxy browsers, which there are much less features and a lot of limitations involved. So Chrome Light Pages is sort of a second stage of data saver technology, mostly for Chrome for Android browser. So basically, when they detect that your connection speed is less than optimal, meaning not just less than optimal, but 2G and slower, like if it takes around 5 seconds to load your page, then they enable it for next pages, and they constantly analyze traffic, and they not just enable data saver, which could be enabled and disabled. They enable some extra layers of optimization, which involves some lazy loading of images. So basically, they disable images until you click on them. They also lazy load JavaScript and blah blah blah. So, but this blog post is not the best announcement, to be honest. The best roundup of features and some analytics. You can find it in Tim Cadlick's Making Sense of Chrome Light Pages article. He went, well, he's known for nice talk, as far as I remember, like better by proxy or something about proxy browsers. So I highly recommend to read his articles on proxy browsers and also to see his talk. But in this article, he explores what Chrome Light pages actually are and what's going on there. And he gives some. He's trying to understand what's missing in the original blog post, and he's giving really nice insights. Well, he's still observing, but I hope to see more articles from Google on that matter. So if you're developing site for countries where connections are 2G and slower, like there are still many countries in the world, many places in the world where connections are less than optimal, how they say. We can rely on these technology in Chrome browser. You can also enable it via a server header, and you can also disable it by sending another server header. So you have some control over it. So please make sure you read at least Tim Cadlick's explanation of this. This might help a lot of users to get your websites faster. Even if you optimize it, they can do better. They can do more than you by. Also, it works via HTTPS, unlike original data saver. So go through the team's article. It's really nice. It's really nice one. But probably the biggest news for me personally, it was the revival, I would say, of CSS nesting module. It used to be a really old article. It used to be a really old draft of CSS nesting. Basically, it's something that reminds you nesting in SAS or less preprocessors. Basically, you'll be able to use ampersands to nest, to combine your selectors in a better way. Personally, it's not my thing. I don't even when I use CSS preprocessors, I don't use ampersands. But it's been a huge demand from developers to have it natively in CSS. So after some discussion in CSS working group, I saw some tweets from Rachel Andrew, from other developer representatives in CSS working group, and there you have it. So at least I believe this is just early draft. Basically, they copied the unofficial draft to official one, and this is just editor's draft. So it's early. We're not gonna have it this year, I guess, but maybe next year. So we will see something, at least advancement on specification itself. Maybe some implementations in browser. So yeah, this is happening. We're slowly getting every feature we wanted from CSS preprocessors into CSS itself. So it's a really great news. I'm looking forward to see it working in browsers. Another news from Google. It's a nice case of kind of a standard library implementation in browsers. So these days, when you use some feature from browser, it's already there. For example, local storage in JavaScript or indexed.db. It's just there. It's sitting in a global scope, and you can use it. But in some cases, you don't want to introduce some features in a global scope. You just want to import it somehow from browser itself, probably, and use it, basically to turn it on. So this is not the first experiment they mentioned from Google. This is I think it's the second experiment. The first they introduced this virtual scroller custom element Well, it's not implemented in Chrome yet, but I think they're planning to do so. And this is the second one. Basically, they have a key value storage. That's what KV stands for. Key value storage based on IndexedDB, but much simpler and easier to use as local storage, but fully featured as IndexedDB. So basically, you'll have some promises. You have a better API, and they implemented it as a JavaScript library that built into browser itself. So you can use it by just importing it via JavaScript. Basically, you write import something from, and you have this STD, meaning standard library prefix, and this is like pseudo URL sort of, and you can use it later in your JavaScript using this storage variable. And there's also a nice fallback for that. It's an import map. Basically, you write when you need when there's something available in your browser, use it. STD KV storage. If this feature is not available, use polyfill, located somewhere in your somewhere on your JavaScript path. So they not just implementing something to Chrome only. They also took care of polyfilling this feature. So this is something special, because we don't have standard library in JavaScript. We don't have standard library in browsers. We only have some features available on platform. But in other languages, like for example, you can call npm a standard library of Node.js, for example, but there's no such thing as standard library for browsers. These are first steps in this direction. So I'm looking forward to it as well. And please go through Philip Walton's article to know more about it. And this is one of my favorite topics, is graphics and video optimization. I'm currently giving a talk called make a fly of an elephant or something like this. I never thought how to translate it to English. But there's another great article in Evil Martian's blog introducing a new video codec for the web. It's AV1 codec, and this one is much more optimal than existing ones. And one of the biggest features of it is that it's patent free. So basically, all browser vendors agreed to use it in future versions. All big manufacturers agreed, and it belongs to all of us. Basically, there's no legal problems attached to its codec. So apart from going through AV1 codec in this article, there's a nice idea that GIF is so outdated, so it's better to use video codecs for animating images. And there are some ideas how to convert, for example, some GIF to video, and by adding some attributes to your HTML, for example, like controls, mute, loop. You can make it look like a proper GIF. So my personal advice: don't use GIF anymore. Use videos, or at least animated WebP. And there are ways to insert them via video, if you're using video as a replacement to GIF, or via picture element if you're trying to use WebP, animated WebP as a replacement. So another great article. Here's a snippet that mimics GIF on the web. So autoplay, loop, muted, plays in line, and some dimensions as well. So you can have your GIF in a much better and much more optimal and user-friendly format. Yep. And some other news from Google, and one of my favorite speakers, Martin Split. He recently started to work for Google, and he's working on SEO direction, so search optimization. And he's started a new series called JavaScript SEO, and he's sharing some tips that are, for me personally, I heard everything about it, but this series might be useful for project owners, for your project managers, for your clients, for maybe for beginners, because Martin explains how JavaScript works on the web in regard of indexing it by Google, for example. So there is a way to optimize it. There is a way to show Google proper versions, static versions of your pages. And if you want something published quickly on the web, a single page way where you render on the client in using a lot of JavaScript is the worst way, because they index static pages first, and when they see JavaScript pages basically created on the fly using JavaScript, they come back later when they can. Of course, they will come back, but when they have enough time and resources on their servers to parse your JavaScript to extract some useful information from it. So if it's something related to news, if it's something that should be available quickly to your users, always go with a static HTML or do some sort of server side rendering if your architecture is based on modern single page frameworks, for example. So the really nice series. I don't think I think it's going to be more than 4 videos. So subscribe. I don't know, Martin. I trust him on this one. And something else, 30 years of web. I think this one is for later discussion, and so we'll touch to this later. We'll talk about this later. And some news from me, thing that I'm so proud of, and I just want to share it with you. Recently, we have launched English speaking courses of the company I work for. It's HTML Academy. Basically, it's something automated. Basically, we have a JavaScript course called JavaScript Basics, and you can go through introduction to JavaScript from zero. So you'll know what's programming is, what's console is, how to multiply 2 digits and such things. And you can go through conditions, loops, arrays, and we'll publish more articles soon. Those courses are free, so you can just go and learn JavaScript from zero. It looks something like this. So you have a nice little cat, some theory, and you can go through the task and go one by one through every step and learn something about JavaScript via some practical steps. So I'm super proud of it. We're gonna have so much more later this year. Some courses about HTML, CSS basics, some SVG basics. So yeah. Follow. We'll tell you more when it's available. But for now, if you're willing to learn some JavaScript, feel free. That's it for me. For its March roundup, the best thing that happened to a web platform recently.
Amazing, thank you, Vadim. I love your course. That looks really good. And as I said to everybody in the chat, immediately after we finished up today, I will post links to all of the news items that Vadim mentioned, excuse me, plus to his course, if it's live yet. Is it live yet, Vadim?
Yeah, it's live for a couple of weeks already.
Send me the link and I will post it up. And also I'll post the link to Tim Cadleck's talk on proxy browsers that Vadim mentioned. I'm going to mute while I clear my throat because you don't want to hear that.
And I'm going to take over instead, because it's for me it's really interesting to see so many fundamental changes happening. So for a long time, it felt like a refinement. It felt like we are pushing this a little bit. We're improving this a little bit. The glorious times when border radius was has become a thing, and now we're seeing a very different wave. I would say generation of changes on the platform. Looking in the browser, I mean, having a native library available and exposed this way, this is just unbelievable. And even if I think about conversations that we had previously many years ago, I remember vividly people fighting about jQuery that had to be built in the browser, so you would not need to load it all over and over.
Oh
And we
yeah,
kind of
that used to be my dream, but not anymore.
Yeah, because it wouldn't be possible to kill it now, right? Would it be?
Yeah, that's true.
Right. So this brings me to like a question for you, Vadim. Actually, I'm wondering, mm, is it where we're heading, or is it just a lot of experimentation? Like we also see browsers giving like all the options to like exposing all these APIs, so we can change little things here and there, tweak almost every single paint operation or rendering operation. Is it like the direction we're going, or is it just browsers trying to do something and then figure out what sticks?
Well, as a web platform, we're not just getting older, but we're getting, I don't know, we're growing up. So if you look at the Java world, if you look at some old technologies, they all share the same thing. They all have standard libraries. They have some things that we still don't have on a platform. So I think we're just catching up. It's not something unusual for mature program languages or ecosystem to have some things like that. So I wouldn't be scared too much. I would be scared if it would be Chrome only thing. And currently, everything that I talked about, PWAs on desktop, for example, and standard library experimentations, those are Chrome only. And yeah, I think you'll be able to use those starting from Chrome 74, the next release, and I think it's already available in Canary, and you'll be able to enable it via some flag, so you can get some token and enable it on your website. So it's already available. It will be available very soon. But I think it's something that we should really be careful about, because when something is on web platform, it cannot be removed once anyone starts to use it. Like you probably have seen some parts of WG spec where they have some what's the name for it, like things that we regret or something like this. Like things that no it was from CSS working group. They call it something web platform interventions or something like this. So they have a list of things that they had to put on the spec because it was implemented by browsers, but some prefixes or wrong capitalization of methods or things like that. So they had to put it in a spec, and every browser, like you can use WebKit prefixes in Edge and Firefox these days. So this is crazy. We don't have to. We should make sure that it's not happening again. So I'm a bit concerned about this. Because we're building something into browsers, and it might be a problem. But I think they're doing it in a smart way. So it could be polyfilled, it could be fold back into something else. They're not trying to replace built-in features of the platform. They're trying to improve it via some additional libraries, for example.
The reason why I'm asking is because I'm just, I always feel like we still have this fight and conversation over and over. I've been like, just last week, actually, I had this conversation with developers who just didn't understand what the big fuss about, Chromium being the only thing. That's great because you have uniformity, you have like you have a convention, a very established convention that's well supported everywhere. What's a big deal, right? And I had to fight this and to lead this fight. And I'm wondering if the audience here, if anybody feels like we are in danger because of the Chromium world taking over the world, or is it something that old people are worried about?
That's why it's really useful to have old people around, because they remember things. because they remember, like they can say like, don't go there, I broke a leg there. Like
That's what old people say.
yes.
Well, I agree with Vadim. I mean, it's great that we have an asynchronous way to do something as simple as local storage. I remember a few years ago when I was at Opera, I interviewed Ian Hickson, the editor of HTML5. I asked him what his biggest regrets were. And one of them, he said, you know, I was really stupid to implement or to specify local storage as synchronous because it can block the main thread.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't understand, and this isn't rhetorical, I'm just stupid, so I don't understand why this is built as a standard library in Chrome. I mean, if you're going to build it in, and thus you can never take it out, why is it built in JavaScript rather than just C++ in the browser and adding a new KV API into the HTML spec? I mean, this seems to be a weird halfway house to me.
Well, I think there should be a way for them to update it without writing spec, without introducing the next level of spec or something like this. So it would be just like npm module with its versioning, with some packages on and things like that. So they'll be able to iterate faster, for example. It won't be a part of a web platform, and you'll have a choice, for example, to use KV storage or Bruce Lawson storage, for example. You should write one.
Oh, I will.
Yeah.
But I agree with Vitaly here. I mean, I'm old. I know you guys don't believe it, but I'm actually in my late 20s, and I know.
No
but
way.
But it does concern me, and my friend Stuart Langridge says this about the Chrome team. They say, trust us, we're doing good things for the web. And I know many members of the Chrome team, and I do trust them. As human beings, I believe that they are, even more than we three, deeply concerned for the health and longevity of the open web platform. But I don't necessarily trust their managers, and the people we know in the Chrome team are getting older because that's how time works, and they will move to other things, retire, go to other places in Google. I don't trust any company, any corporate entity with something as important as the web, personally. And that's why one of the things that troubles me, as it troubles you, Vitaly, is that the worry that Edge is moving to Chromium, not because I particularly loved Trident, but because it means that we only have one cross-platform non-Chromium browser, and that's Firefox. And it's why I'm so glad at the moment that the Firefox developer tools are really great. We had a webinar a couple of weeks ago with Jianhui Jing, who showed how you can teach yourself Flexbox and Grid using the Firefox dev tools because they're best in breed. So at least for the moment, there's a really good reason for developers to use Firefox in their development because their dev tools are so great.
Yeah.
But Google has the might to be able to compete there as well. Developers testing Firefox.
Yeah.
Firefox is my main browser. Come on.
Me too.
Yeah. But it's always like interesting because at the same time I see so many other things happening as well. Like we tend to believe our data more than we believe anything else. And so one thing that I find remarkable sometimes is this kind of conversations with managers when we actually talk about, proxy browsers, or at least I initiate the conversation, talk about proxy browsers and, what's going to happen on a slow connection. And then a very common response to that would be, well, I looked up my data and in my analytics, there is not even a single person who is using 2G or is using one of those crappy devices that are common in Indonesia, in Southeast Asia, and so on. And there is a good reason maybe why there is no data showing that these people are using your site on these phones, because maybe your site just doesn't work well on these kind of devices. So of course they're not coming back, and it's like a vicious circle. and it's always, you know, the explanation. So I think when Chromium Chrome Light, right?
Yeah.
It might actually bring back a healthy discussion about the importance of optimizing for low-end devices, right?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I mean, it was hard because, as Vadim will remember, there were in its heyday we had 250 million users of Opera Mini, and it was still tricky. Certainly, when we first joined Opera, to make anybody care about Opera Mini, until the big companies suddenly realized that the next billion users weren't all lurking in Silicon Valley, but were living in Indonesia, India, and these were people with a growing disposable income that they wanted to target. And then people used to knock on our doors. But again, I think since the growth of Angular and React, huge amounts of client-side processing required for simple websites, it's been harder and harder to persuade people to think about, don't go too heavy on the JavaScript. And Chrome is so big and so widespread that if they are introducing Chrome Light pages, developers are going to have to care again. We go round and round this cycle every 4 or 5 years, and me as token old person on the team, I remember this the first time around.
Yeah, but
well, I believe with the Chrome Light pages, they're not gonna break. Well, they'll try their best and not to break anything. So they'll unlike Opera Mini, they won't just crush everything into just a picture with some actionable areas over it, but they're trying to work with actual pages by disabling images unless you press on them, by offloading or lazy loading JavaScript, by disabling some animations or things like that might consume a lot of energy or a lot of traffic. So it's another way of doing that. Opera Mini used to be a thing, and it still is. But I mean, it used to be a bigger thing back in the days when internet was not that available, not that high speed. Because I'm visiting Europe these days, and I don't have to care too much about traffic as I used to, because I have some SIM cards that are quite cheap, and I have a connection almost everywhere. But back in 5 years ago, I used to pay crazy amounts of money to get some website open. So I used Opera Mini on my iPhone. So expensive device, cheapest browser, and yeah, I got my site working. So we're getting there. I think it's a Chrome Light pages is the next step in this direction, and I'm glad they did it. But it's a modern step. They're not just processing everything on the server and showing you a picture.
Well, it's very different, isn't it? Because Opera Mini was a tiny download. It was a very small browser for devices that didn't actually have an operating system, so didn't have the processing power to run a browser. But this is Chrome, the full Chrome, but intervening. And I've seen some pushback by developers about this, that the browser shouldn't do this. And I feel very strongly that the browser is, as Web Standards Land call it, a user agent. It's there to serve the user. And we have a long history of the browser intervening. Pop-up blockers were an obvious one. The browser intervenes to tell you a script is taking too long. A browser will intervene to tell you that you're going to a site which isn't necessarily trusted. And now the browser's intervening to tell you that the site is going to take ages to load or eat your battery. Developers, again, it's the same old. Developers, you're giving a hint to the browser of what you want displayed, and the browser intervenes.
Yeah, I think it even goes beyond that. It's very interesting to see that right now we really have to actively think beyond the scope of what we're used to. If you think about, designing these days, many of us are still thinking about, okay, optimizing for mobile, optimizing for desktop, and then kind of squishing things in between. But as of now, we really do have to think, how should my application, my website, whatever experience I'm creating, should adapt based on memory, based on connection, maybe based on weather. No, not necessarily weather, but we have all these options that considerations, I guess. They are all things that we can check, right? And so I'm curious to see where it's heading next. And especially, actually, I do have to contradict to Vadim at this point. Actually, I do feel like I'm using more and more data every month, not because I want to, but because in some way, like because of a retina screen that I have, I end up just getting better images, getting better videos. Sometimes even I start getting now 4K videos. Like I don't want them, but it's too late when we download like 180, right? So
I'm just happy person. I have unlimited traffic in Russia at least. So
okay.
I'm really sorry for you.
Yeah, that's very it doesn't really help me really. But yeah, it's very interesting to see all these developments happening. I think that this is and also like the new codec and stuff. It's like we've been craving for something like that for I don't know how long. And so do you see many people using AV1 already? We can use it today, right? But I
Yeah,
don't really
well,
see it, or
the,
maybe it's just me.
there is a problem with that because it's not optimized yet, optimized for content creators. So once it's ready and uploaded to some website, I think you can use it in Chrome. I think it will be available in Firefox. I completely forgot the compatibility, but all browsers are happy to implement it. So it's just a matter of time. But if you want to encode some video into AV1 codec, it will take ages. So it's there are many parts in this equation. So like it's super efficiently compressed and it's lightweight and it's hardware supported, blah blah blah. But also how fast you can encode your video into this codec. This part is not optimized yet. There's no efficient encoders available yet. So if you want to encode your like 1080p video into like hour-long 1080p video, it might take like 24 hours.
Really? Wow.
Really. So it's not optimized in this regard. So, but for small videos, small GIFs, and things like that, it's not gonna take long. So there is a way to use it these days already. So go for it. Seriously.
It's very much like the story with WebP. I remember a few years ago at Google I/O, and they said that they use WebP in all the Google sites except for Google Maps. And that's because Google Maps tiles don't pre-exist. They're made on the fly. And because WebP is basically the still version of WebM, the video codec, which is super efficient to consume, it takes too long to actually compile or when you make it, and therefore they couldn't make it just in time for Google Maps. But I wouldn't be surprised if now they've optimized the coding bit of it. And again, if it takes longer if when we're building and testing, we're still using MP4 or WebM to get fast iterative build stages, and then it takes a little bit longer to make it into AV1 to go to production, so be it, because it's much better for the end user. And who do we serve?
Yeah, it's like when you're uploading something to YouTube, you have like 360, and then in a half an hour you have 180 or like 4K. So it's just progressively enhancing. Yeah, it's same old thing.
Yeah, and it's also kind of similar to Broadly and Zoffly if you look into it, because they also take more time to compress. It looks like
Is it cartoon? Broadly and Zoffly?
Could be. But it's interesting that we kind of getting to the point where it's just getting extremely expensive we can compress better, but it takes much more kind of power, so to say, to compress. But it brings me to another question that I'm curious about. And that's also a question that a colleague of mine came up last week. And the problem is, so we have all these new formats coming up. That's nice. We have responsive images. That's nice. We have new form factors coming up. That's nice. So we need to optimize for watches and this and that.
Mhm.
But do you know of any tool that would allow you to kind of manage a big, wide, large kind of libraries of images and videos? Like imagine now you have like a legacy site which has maybe, I don't know, hundreds of videos, right? You need to kind of keep track of serving them. So you need to prepare now AV1, right? Eventually, if you have like a good enough source, you might even come up with 2K or 4K, right? But then some images might be already in AV1, the others not. The same
Yeah.
goes for images, right? If we look into WebP, which is now finally supported, I mean, at least as far as I understood, it's kind of, we can use it safely. We need a fallback still, but still.
Yeah.
Is there like a way of, how would you even manage all of that?
Well, I think the best tool for it, the best tool for solving this problem depends on size of your project. So if you have something as huge and as old as Smash Magazine, for example, it's better to use some Cloudflare, Netlify, or tools like that to manage all your resources. So you have a source image in like MOV or MP4 format, or PNG24 for bitmap, for example. But once you have it crunched somewhere on a server, you'll get multiple versions and multiple resolutions, and so you offload everything to CDNs, to smart CDNs. Upload care, yeah, Cloudflare, like there are many, like 5 or 6 of them that are popular.
So essentially, you would upload the videos and the image, and they will take care of everything else, like
Yeah,
clouding up.
that's how it works usually. But if you have something smaller, like a personal blog or something, or like a side of a conference I organize, what I do, I always have bigger picture, something like 1024 pixels by 124 pixels, like for a profile picture, for example. And it's like JPEG with 90% compression. It's like stupidly good. And when I test my site locally, I don't process anything. So every picture is a huge picture, but yeah, scaled down to the small square, to a small square. But once I run gulp deploy server, or like something, the gulp deploy something like the proper server version, it crunches everything into small pictures, and like 128 to 156 for retina and blah blah blah. So when it's deployed, when it's published, it's all optimized. When I test it locally, I don't spend time resizing like hundreds of images for my local project. That's how it works for me. I don't optimize videos. I just store it on YouTube. I think YouTube is a reliable source, and they put so much effort into optimizing their video for instant playback for every device possible. So I trust them. Or you can use Vimeo. They did the same for their service, and they have much more flexibility. You can also replace video files, for example, using Vimeo, which is not possible on YouTube. So you can find your video hosting video provider and hosting service.
But what if I want to serve it from my own thing? Then I will have to rely on Cloudflare or.
Well, you need to find server that's very mighty. And find a deal when you have a lot of traffic, because video is super heavy and you'll have to pay for every traffic you have.
A lot of traffic.
So, like for pictures, even if you have thousands of pictures, like hundreds of thousands of pictures, it's still possible. For videos, I wouldn't recommend doing this. Don't try to repeat it at home, something like this.
So I do have tons of questions. I'm just too curious, I guess. You want to say something, Bruce?
Yes, I'm going to say that we're going to wrap it up quite soon.
Really?
Yeah. There we were, worried we didn't have enough content, and we're 9 minutes off the hour. There's been quite a few questions, but as is the case with our charming, smashing community, other members of the community have answered them for the other people, which is delightful.
So we don't have to do anything.
We don't have to do anything. I think one thing that what you clever types have suggested to me, and to go back to Vitaly's first point, I think we're seeing a trend in the web that began with things like the Extensible Web Manifesto. For example, seeing CSS nesting, this is watching the community build things like less and SAS, seeing what people want to do, seeing what becomes a canon of good practice, and then retrospectively specifying it into the browsers so that it's part of the platform. I think that's a general trend that we're seeing. And likewise with PWAs on desktop. If you made your PWA as a responsive site, it will just work on desktop. If you made it just for mobile, well, good on you, but you didn't get completely the point in that it's an application that should work anywhere. It's not just a mobile thing. And I think this dovetails well into the web turns 30. Yep, we seeing loads and loads of the stuff that Tim Berners-Lee warned us about, the proliferation of those horrible videos that the big services are trying to fight from the Christchurch mosque attacks. And there is subversion of democracy, and there is all the negative side. But at the end of the day, it's 30 years on, and all of us watching and all of us participating, we've got careers that I could never have dreamed of as a child.
Yeah.
In this amazing thing that empowers people across the world. We had a live webinar with people from Philippines, Indonesia. You're in Russia, Vitaly. You're presumably in a space station orbiting Mars.
That's correct.
What a wonderful thing we have. Here's to the next 30 years.
Yeah, it's the best thing that happened to me in my life, I think. The web, the web platform and the internet in general. So it changed everything.
Yes.
Yeah, I think there are also always like two sides of things, and so the bad news always make news, right? This is why they're called news. But nobody really talks. Not many people talk about good news, really. But I think that in many ways we're into how we are connected, and even people tend to hate Facebook, and I understand why. And I'm not going to be the one protecting Facebook, saying that this is the best platform ever, but it enabled a couple of things that was just not possible before, and we tend to forget about it sometimes. Like, for example, just really having even although it might be evil Facebook, but having a very simple way to connect with people all around the world, that's extremely powerful. And on the other side, finding groups, communities where people feel like they belong, right? We had MySpace back in the day, but it was a bit different with Facebook. Whatever interests you have, you can join a group, and then you can really talk to people all around the world who are interested in that group as well. So that's a very powerful feature that Facebook brought, and that did not exist before. So the reason why I'm saying this is because in every single thing that we're doing, be it Google doing thing on their own because they feel like it, I feel there is always a little bit of positive thing as well. So
Absolutely.
And so I'm kind of looking forward to explore what the next 30 years will bring. And I feel comfortable, when I'm 70 or so, 60, to just still write good old HTML that would still work.
You're absolutely right, Vitaly.
Although everybody will have forgotten IE at this point.
You're absolutely right. As those of you who've seen me do talks, and we'll get on to the next talks that we're all doing in a few minutes, but one of the things I'm talking about this year in the conferences is, remembering what made the web so important and so powerful, and that was HTML, and that's what connects us all. And yeah, the web fundamentally isn't loads of computers, and it's not loads of protocols. It might be TCP and HTTP, but that's not what it is. What it is all of human life. And in the same way, in the same way that there's lots of bad things about humanity, there's lots of bad things you see on the web, and there's lots of good things too. I was talking to a friend of mine, I won't name her, but I think she's public with it, but I can't be absolutely sure. But she's a trans woman who grew up in a very sort of conservative working class area in north of England. And she said the web saved her life because she was suicidal as a young person until she found a community of other trans women who she'd never have a chance to meet in real life because of where she grew up, and it saved her life. And I think that those things are, God, I'm going to cry, are worth remembering when we're looking at all
the reason why we do this in the first place. Yeah.
Absolutely.
They matter. Yeah.
Group hug. Okay, we're nearly on the hour. A quick roundup of conferences and things coming up. I shall be banging on about HTML in a talk called How to Make Loveliness, which of course that's what HTML stands for. It's how to make loveliness. Yeah. Didn't you know that?
I thought it's somehow related to markup. Sorry.
No. That's a misnomer. I will put the dates in the chat, and I shall be emceeing You Gotta Love Front End in Israel in
Really?
early April, because they asked me and they said, "Oh, it's a resort on the nicest beach in Israel, and your room's going to look out on the sea." And I thought, it's been a long, cold winter, and I need a bit of Mediterranean sun. And I shall be emceeing You Gotta Love Front End in Vilnius, where I believe a Mr. Vitaly Friedman will be speaking. What will he be speaking about, Vitaly?
I wish I knew. I don't know yet.
Well,
about things, life, and
things are happening. Maybe it will be, Chrome lights. You never know.
Excellent.
You never know.
You can see Vitaly's busy schedule. What about you, Mr. McKee? Where will you be speaking, or where will you be visiting and attending?
Well, in a couple of weeks, I'll be speaking at Code Fest in Novosibirsk. So I'm mostly speaking at Russian-speaking events. So I'm not sure if it will be too interesting to our listeners and community, Smashing community, because like I don't see any. I see someone from Samara. So maybe it's just I don't know if it's somewhere. If it's someone's name, I don't know.
Samarpanda, I think.
Samarpanda. Okay, so it's not Russian city. I thought maybe.
There are no pandas in Russian cities. Pandas are native to China.
No. So I think the biggest event I'm going to attend this year, well, in the first half of the year, it's going to be JavaScript and CSS. JavaScript Conf and CSS Conf in Berlin. So it's the end of May and the beginning of June. So it's May 30th and June 1st and 2nd. So I'm looking forward to see everyone who's attending too, because it's like one of my favorite European conferences. So I'm not speaking there. They declined my talk, but that's all right. That's all right. That's all right. They have like 200 of applications. So I'm not the best speaker in the world. Maybe second best. Anyway, that's probably it for me. And I'm gonna be attending a lot of conferences in Russia soon. But yeah, CodeFest, one of the biggest of them.
It's always the same thing. Conferences.
Yeah. Also Dump conference, DUMP, whatever. In Yekaterinburg, it's somewhere in the middle of Russia. It's also big conference on April. So yeah, a lot of things happening. But English speaking one, it's a JavaScript and CSS Conf in Berlin. I also applied to JS Conf and CSS Conf in Budapest in September. So I might go there anyway if they accept me or not. So it's another good conference, another city I was looking forward to visit. So maybe.
Excellent. And of course, I believe there is a Smashing conference in San Francisco soon.
Right.
Yes, we have Smashing Conf Toronto and San Francisco coming up. Oh, that's been like we tried very hard to come up with a nice balanced lineup, and I'm very proud of what we achieved in terms of topic, in terms of people. Many of them will be speaking for the first time. And just in case you don't know, both conferences, essentially all conferences that are going to happen this year, have essentially a new format where we encourage speakers to not use any slides. So instead, they do something live, like live coding, live designing, live sketching, live accessibility audit, live performance audit. And so I'm really proud to have really good group of people presenting in Toronto, or in San Francisco in April, and in Toronto in June.
I had to go and check. Yeah, we're not trying to sell you tickets for San Francisco, everybody, because it's been sold out for ages, which is nice.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna wrap it up there.
I have something else. Speaking of San Francisco, once this first Vadim and Vitaly show is finished, I'm heading to Moscow to get my visa, and probably I will attend Google I/O this year. So hope to see everyone who is attending there. Yeah, my first Google I/O. If I'm lucky to get a visa.
Fingers crossed for the visa, sir. I remember the thrills of trying to get my Russian visa. Anyway, everybody, I want to thank Vadim very much and Vitaly very much. There'll be another show next month. We haven't quite got the dates yet because we got very busy schedules, but we will keep you posted. Next Tuesday, it's another freebie to all, not just to Smashing members, with somebody you may have heard of, a little-known gentleman called Andy Clark, who's going to be talking to me about art direction for the web. Smashing members, book your seats quickly because it's open to everybody, so make sure you get there first. It's on the page. Very soon, this afternoon, I will put all the links that we've discussed today on this webinar's page and point a link in the Smashing Slack. And we will see you soon. Thank you to my guests, the amazing and the groovy Vitaly and Vadim. I didn't even have any beers last night, so I would be perfectly good for today. So right now, I am going to show the intro music that I should have shown at the beginning of this when I find where my Zoom thing has gone. We will see you next month, everybody. I want to thank Scott, as always, for all of his help behind the scenes, turning things on and turning things off. We will see you with another Smashing webinar next week. Until then, adieu.
Here's Vitaly from Smashing Magazine, from HTML Academy. Here comes Vadim for all things web. Come on, let's go to the Vadim and Vitaly video show. Yeah, the Vadim and Vitaly video show. And Bruce. Vitaly and Vadim, Smashing TV's dream team. Vadim and Vitaly, hear them chat so wittily, fabulous and groovy. They should make a movie of the Vadim and Vitaly video show.
And Bruce! Bye.